Hello and a very warm welcome to everybody joining me for another installment of Inside SA Media, which is proudly brought to you by Tribox Media and Fact Forward. My name is Mlambo-Ngcuka on a chair. Absolutely thrilled to be doing this with you one more time. Let's get into it. Half the world, but only a quarter of the news. That's the latest finding in the Global Media Monitoring Project of 2025. After 3 decades of tracking, women are still just 26% of news subjects and sources worldwide. And while women now make up 41% of reporters, their stories, perspectives, and leadership remain underrepresented in the headlines. These gaps are even sharper in coverage of critical issues like gender-based violence. Globally, fewer than 2% of news stories actually focus on gender-based violence, despite it being a daily toll on women's lives. South Africa is no exception. From newsroom representation to the framing of gender-based violence protests, our media reflects these global imbalances while also carrying its own unique complexities. Our media is shaped by a history of apartheid and colonialism. Systems that entrenched racial segregation, gender inequality, and concentrated power in the hands of a few. This legacy continues to influence who gets to speak, who gets to lead, and whose stories make the headlines. In today's episode, we unpack how women are represented in newsrooms, on our screens, and in the headlines that shape public opinion. Representation begins behind the desk. Now, under apartheid, media ownership and editorial power were almost exclusively in white male hands. Today, women occupy only 29% of top editorial positions, a decline from 47% in 2020. Even when women are present, their decision-making power is often limited, shaping which stories reach the public. When you're one of few women in the room, your perspective can easily be sidelined. It's not always deliberate or intentional, but it means that certain voices don't make it to the front page. On screen, the imbalance becomes even clearer. Men dominate as experts, analysts, and leaders, while women are more often portrayed as victims, celebrities, or featured more in soft news. The GMMP reports that only 24% of news sources cited in South African media are women.
Our political analyst, Professor Ntsikelelo Breakfast, joins us to discuss these latest developments and what they mean for the political landscape.
Joining us now, Dr. Nsizwa, beg your pardon, Yende, political analyst.
And helping us to further unpack this is political analyst Professor Ntsikelelo Breakfast.
Professor Bheki Mngomezulu is a political analyst at Nelson Mandela University.
For more on this, we are now joined by Professor Gidiboni Paho from the Northwest University School of Government Studies.
The result? A subtle but powerful message that women's voices are secondary even when they are leaders in their fields. When Mlambo-Ngcuka became South Africa's first deputy female president, coverage often focused less on her policy work and more on whether she was fit to lead, a question which was rarely asked of male counterparts. Later on, as the head of UN Women, her global influence was sometimes underplayed here at home. Lindiwe Sisulu, a veteran politician and one of the longest-serving cabinet members, has often been framed in the media through the lens of her family name, the Sisulu dynasty, rather than any of her policy positions. Her presidential campaign coverage focused more on personality clashes rather than the ideas that she had for the country. Women politicians walk a tightrope. Their performance is still constantly evaluated against historical or societal expectations, which the media amplifies. And when women speak on issues like gender-based violence, the framing can be double-edged. They are celebrated as advocates, but scrutinized more harshly if they fall short of the public expectations. Bias often hides in plain sight, right there in the headlines. Men are defined by their achievements and women by their personal lives. The language that we use shapes how audiences perceive authority and credibility. But despite these challenges, women in South African media are pushing back. From investigative reporters breaking corruption scandals to editors leading digital platforms, women are reshaping the narrative and have been doing so for quite some time. Journalists like Sikim Gabadeli, Tsidi Madia, Sakina Kamwendo, and Simnikiwe Kabanisa are those types of women that have been breaking into those male-dominated beats, such as politics, business, and sports, really going out of their way to challenge stereotypes and reshape the narrative.
To tell us more about this, I'm joined by Mlambo-Ngcuka, who is the Director for Legal and International Trade at the DTI. Thank you so much, Mlambo, for your time today. It's taken some time, 9 years to get here? Why has it taken so long?
Everybody recognizes there's a problem. It isn't targeted at particular people. For me, for the life of me, a president of the US with everything he's got access to try and prove a point about what's happening, that's all you could produce today. I found that interesting.
Now, Liqua, very interestingly, Criselda, they come to the fore for a very dubious distinction. They had the dubious distinction of getting the National Treasury and national government having to intervene directly at local government level. Why? Because they failed to deliver services, dismally so.
Understanding historical bias and supporting women who lead ensures that stories are complete, that stories are inclusive, and that stories, very importantly, reflect South Africa today. Women are not here to just fill quotas. They're here to tell stories that matter to our communities, stories that reflect the realities of women's lives. So, whose voice counts? The media has the power to amplify or to silence. Ensuring women's representation, both in the newsroom and in the stories that we tell, isn't just about fairness, it's also about accuracy. But when half of the population is underrepresented, that means the story is never complete. Thank you so very much for joining me for today's episode of Inside SA Media, where we looked at women and the media and whose voice really counts. I'd love to hear your opinions on today's episode and how you see the shift taking place in South Africa specifically. From myself, Mlambo-Ngcuka, on a chair, it is goodbye.